Hi guys, welcome back to another video on Next.js 13. Recently they have launched 13.5 version of Next.js, so I'll be using this and I will show you in this video how we can protect our front-end routes which we create in our Next.js 13 application within the app directory. Okay, so I'll be creating the UI, the main page, the layout file, and in the navbar I'll be creating 4 different routes. I'll show you how you can protect those routes in 4 different methods. Before moving further, I just want to let you know that this is my 30th video on Next.js 13. Before that, I've already created a lot of videos including the crash course on Next.js 13. Along with that, I have explained the best practices of using the different components, use effect, use state, theming, MongoDB, server actions, Redux context API, building full stack applications using the Sanity and the Ghost CMS, debugging Next.js 13, state management, and building different projects, and also the TypeScript in Next.js 13.4 or the later versions. So go check out my playlist that I've given the link of in the description of this video, and I'm doing a lot of effort building these videos for you guys, so do subscribe my channel and like this video. So let's start building up the layout first. So I'm going to open up this layout file, layout.tsx, within the app directory. So I'm going to add some styling first of all. So I'm going to wrap the children within a div. So I'm going to write the div class name, and I'm going to write mx auto max w5xl text 2xl gap 2 and mb 10. Okay, so let's copy this children and paste it over here. So I have wrapped this out. So first of all, I'm going to create a new component. So I'm going to right click on the source folder. So I'm going to write the components. Okay, inside this components, I'm going to create a new file, and I'm going to write the navbar.tsx. So in this file, I'm going to create the navbar. Okay, so I hope that you're already aware of how you can create the components. So I'm going to write RAFCE. I'm using the extension for creating these snippets. You can install that in VS Code. Okay, so for that, I'm also going to import the link from the next link because I want to navigate from one page to another page. So inside this div, I'm going to add a UL element. Okay, so inside this UL, I'm going to create different links. So I'm going to start off with the link that I have just added above. So link and href, this is for the home route. Okay, so let's add li, and here I'm going to write the home. Okay, and just like this link, I'm going to add a few more links below this. Right, this is for the client side, this is for the client side with HOC. I'm going to write server side and from the middleware. So these are the 4 different methods. I'm going to show you how we can protect it in different way. One is from the client side, one is wrap the client within the high order component, and other one is how we can protect our route from the server components, and how we can protect our route from the middleware file. Okay, so for this, I'm going to come to UL class name, and I'm going to write the flex m10 and then the gap 10. Okay, so let's save it. And now I'm going to open up this page.tsx file, and I'm going to add some styling to it first. So I'm just going to remove all of the elements inside the main. Okay, and inside it, let's add one h1. This is just to see if our stylings are working fine or not. So I'm not going to touch anything or remove any styling from the main element. Okay, so let's run our project. So I'm going to go inside the protect routes npm run dev. So I just want to see whether our layout is working fine, and in this layout file, I also want to add that navbar above the children, so that it is available in all the routes that we are going to be creating, because layout is the main layout file for all the routes. So I'm going to write navbar, and it's going to show me that this is the file and this one. Okay, so this has automatically being imported at the top, and it will be visible at the top. So let's go to our browser. And this is how it's looking on the browser. Currently I'm the home route. If I click on the client side, it will throw an error because we have not created these routes yet. If I go back to the home route, and this is how it is printing. The purpose of this video is to just to protect these routes using these concepts. So let's see how we can do that. So I don't want to make this code complex, that I first integrate any authentication system like Next.auth and check if the session or user exists, then I'm going to protect the route. But I'm going to mimic the same behavior of authentication by creating a variable that I can change its value and see if our routes are protected or not. Okay, so I'm going to right click on the source directory and I'm going to create a utils folder, and inside it I'm going to create a new file, let's say a session.ts. okay, and in this file I'm simply going to create a variable. So this one I'm going to write the session status equals to false. This is for just to keep this code base simpler without integrating any authentication system. I'll be creating another video on Next.auth, and that requires some extra files and configuration system which I don't want to go into. Okay, I'll be using this variable to protect my routes and to public my routes based upon its value. Okay, so let's create first this route client side. If I click on it, its route name is the client side. I need to create the folder name with the same name, so I'm going to right click on the app directory and I'm going to write the client side. Okay, and inside it I'm going to create a file page.tsx. I hope that you are already aware of the routing system in Next.js 13. If not, check on my playlist on Next.js 13 tutorials. Okay, so inside it, first of all, I need to write use client at the top to make this component client side. Okay, so now I'm going to import few stuff. First of all, let's import the session status file or a variable that I have added in that session file. Okay, so this is how I can import that, which I can use to mimic the behavior of session exists or not. So I'm going to redirect it. If I'm not authenticated, if the route is protected, I want to automatically navigate back to my home route. So this has to be coming from React actually. Okay, this has to be coming from navigation. So redirect from next/navigation. Okay, so after that, let's create a component. So const client side equals to arrow function, and inside it I can simply return first of all. So I can write this page is protected route on client side. Okay, so now I can actually export this. So default client side, let's save it and let's go to our browser and see if it's working. Yes, it's working. I can navigate back to home route and this is not protected currently. So based upon this variable, let's try to make this component protected. So first of all, I want to show you one thing. I'm going to use a use effect hook first of all from the React, and in this use effect hook, let's add an arrow function and let's add an empty array over here. Okay, so inside it, let's add a variable session equals to session status. Okay, the reason I have added this session because Next.auth give us the same variable name, so this is why I have created a new variable. So I can actually check if the session does not exist, then I'm going to redirect back to my home route. Okay, so let's save it and let's go. Let's click on client side, and now you can see that if I click on the client side, it automatically detects that the session does not exist because by default I have added its value false. Okay, so it is going to redirect, but this is not a good practice because when we use a use effect, we actually first it comes to the client side component, then it first renders the content of the component, then it goes up and click on this use effect. Okay, let me show you what do I mean by that. If I click on the home route, let me hard refresh the page, and if I click on the client side, you will see that there will be a slightly flicker for a millisecond. It will show this content, then it will go up and it's going to redirect back to the home route. Okay, so I'm going to click on the client side Let's hard refresh this page, click on the client side, and now you saw that there was that text visible for a millisecond. And to handle this, I'm going to change this hook to use layout effect. So what it does is it actually executes before this content actually renders on the page. Okay, so let's save this file. Let's go over here, let's hard refresh so that we can see that if I click on the client side, you will see that if I click on the client side, there wasn't any flicker of this content. Okay, so on the client side component, this is how we can use the redirection and make any component protected. But this process, this way and this method of making any route protected is not recommended, because what we do is we keep all the pages in Next.js 13 a server side components, and whenever we need to do some kind of hydration like a form, user events, we create separate components and make those components client side components and add those components reference within these parent components which we have kept the server side components. So usually we don't make these direct component within the routes a client components. This is not a recommended, but this is a one way. If you ever need to make any route protected, you can do this it like this. The next way is to protect the client side component with the high order component. So let's talk about that. So let's create its component first. So I'm going to open up this navbar file, and this is the name of that file or a folder. So I'm just going to create a folder with the same name, and I'm going to create a file page.tsx. Okay, so let me use RAFCE, and it has to be a client side HOC. Okay, so I'm going to change it. This page is protected route on client side HOC. Okay, I can just remove it. Let's make it client side component. By default, all components are server side. We have to add this to make any component client side. So that's it we need to do. Currently it's not protected. If I go to browser, let's go to the home route, client side, it is protected currently. If I click on the client side with HOC, you can see that it is visible now. I don't want to touch this component. I still want to make this route protected. So how I can do that? Let's create another component, and this has to be inside this components. It's not required. I'm just organizing my folder structure. So in the component, I'm going to create with auth.tsx. Okay, this is the high order component, and once I write anything inside it, I will explain you what do I mean by high order component. So first of all, I will be using the use effect inside it. So for using it, I'm going to make this component a client side component. All right, so now I'm going to import that variable first of all, because that variable is responsible to make sure that whether we want to make our route protected or not. In our case, usually we handle it through the real sessions or the token inside the local storage or the cookies or something like that. Okay, so I'm going to now redirect from the next navigation, and then I'm going to import the use effect and the use state. Okay, so I don't need use state here, and let's create and export default. I'm going to make it a function. So let's add with auth. I'm going to pass the component to it. Okay, so here I'm going to return a new component by modifying this component which I'll be passing from here. Okay, let me close the other stuff here, layout, package, and yes, it's clean now. Okay, so here inside it, I'm going to return a function. So let's name it with auth, and it's going to take the props of type any. Okay, so now I'm going to create a new variable, a session status. Okay, and here inside the use effect, I'm going to be detecting use effect, this one, and here I'm going to check if I'm not authenticated, then I'm just going to redirect to the home route. All right, let's add this one, empty array, and after this I also need to uh, return null here as well. Okay, and then finally I'm going to return a component. So component which is passed over here, so I'm going to write dot 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 props, this one, and like this. So let's save it. It will not work actually because I have not passed any component to this one. So this is the high order component. If you are not sure what is high order component, we pass any component to this new component, and this high order component is responsible for modifying that component or checking the values within that component where what we want to do. So this is how we are actually returning the same component which was passed to it, but along with the props. Okay, so here I'm gonna go inside it and I'm going to wrap this particular component before exporting with auth. Okay, this is what I have created. Let me add this. So with auth, let me wrap it with the parentheses, and I'm going to close the parentheses. So whenever any component, currently our navbar is actually using, so currently it's directly being navigated over here. So whenever this line is going to get executed, it's first going to pass this component to this high order component over here. Okay, and once it is passed, it's going to process every logic that we have actually written over here, and after this process it's going to return the component that what we want to do. So this component means that if we are not actually session exists, then we are going to show the content of the component. If the session does not exist, then we are simply going to redirect to the home route. Okay, so we can write any logic in high order component. So let's go over here, let's hard refresh. We have the home route, we have the client side component, it is protected. We have this client side with HOC. If I click on it, you will see that I'm not able to navigate to it because it is protected because of this high order component. So before creating and make this server component protected, let's first try one thing. I'm going to change its value to true. Okay, now we are authenticated and session exists. Now our routes should not be protected. Let's save it and let's go over here. Let's refresh. And if I click on the client side, you can see that it is no more protected. If I click on the client side with HOC, this route is no more protected. So it means that our protection for the routes is working fine with this session variable that we have created. But let's keep it false because I want to make other routes. One is the server components, and then I have this middleware file that I'll be creating to make this route protected. Okay, so here first of all I'm gonna go and create a new route. So let's open up this. So this is the name of that folder. So I'm gonna right click over here, let's paste this, and I'm going to create a new file, page.tsx. Okay, so in this file, actually the component, I'm actually going to write some code. So first of all, let's create this RAFCE, and I'm going to change its name server side. Okay, and let's change its content. This is a route on server side. Okay, actually this is a server component. Let's use the concept of Next.js. Okay, this is a server component, and it's pretty easy to actually make this route protected because the server components renders on the server and there will not be any flickering if we directly try to make this particular component protected. I'm not writing use client at the top. I want to keep it a server component. So let's import that session status. I'm gonna go over here, and I'm going to go over here and I'm just going to copy these two lines to save some of our time. Let's actually remove, let's keep that. So session status and the redirect. So in this component, if I go over here, I'm able to navigate to it. So this is the content being shown over here. This is the home. This is these routes are protected. This is not protected currently. Okay. So here I'm simply going to fetch that session and I don't need to do, actually I've already explained, because it's usually a variable from next auth. So simply I'm going to write session over here. Okay, and if session does not exist, I'm simply going to redirect to the home page, and that's pretty much it to protect our server component. It will not cause any flickering over here because this server components does not actually render content on the client side. It will first check this logic, and if the session does not exist, then it will simply be redirecting to home page. So let's save it. Let's go over here. Let's refresh the page. Client side with HOC, server side, and I'm not navigating to the server's components because it is protected. And this is how cool is this, that with this one condition we are able to protect our server components, which is actually a route. Okay, so the fourth one is this middleware route, which I have yet to create. So its actually name is middleware side. So let's copy its folder name and I'm going to paste over here. Let's create a page.tsx file quickly and rafce. So let's change its name, middleware side, and this is middleware component. Okay, anything. So here we can actually make this component client side or the server side. It's up to us. Okay, so let's try to first change it to the client side, and I'm going to create a new middleware file, and through that file I'm going to make this component protected. Let's first go ahead. Are we able to navigate? Yes, we are able to navigate to this route and it's working fine. So parallel to this app folder, I'm going to create a new file, and it is going to be with the name middleware.ts. okay, when we use next auth, that provides a different syntax of code within this middleware file that we can follow. I will be creating a video, a complete video on next auth that will involve the registration of users, login of users, using credentials, using other providers like GitHub, Google, and also I'll be integrating that user data with the MongoDB and show you how we can build a complete authentication process with that. In this video, I just want to keep it simple. So I'm going to start off with creating a session status. So I'm going to go over here, and first I'm going to bring up this file for the variable, and after this I'm going to add a next request. So this file is just like our API route, so we can actually use some server-side code as well in this file. So next request, which is coming from the next server, and then next response, which is coming from the same next server. Okay, so let's create an array. So we have 4 routes currently. I want to create an array that which routes I want to make protected. So I'm going to write the protected routes equals to an array, and I'm going to slash, and let's name the middleware side. So make sure you spell it right. So this is the name of that folder over here. This is the name of that route. Okay, so I can add more routes as well, which I want to make protected. Let's create a component. So export default function, and I'm going to name it middleware. Okay, so it's going to take the request and any. All right, and then inside it I'm going to first check if the session status does not exist. Inside this, I'm first going to check if the session status does not exist and protected routes dot includes, and I can get the URL. So it depends wherever we are navigated to in our application, we can get that particular active URL from the request object coming from this function request dot next URL dot path name. Okay, so if this condition is true, I need to add an extra parenthesis. So if this condition is true, I'm going to create a new URL, absolute URL equals to new URL, this one, and then next URL dot origin. Okay, so this is actually required that we need to do request next URL dot origin, and after this I actually want to return the next response dot redirect, and inside it I want to use absolute URL dot toString. Okay, I need to see why it's showing an error. So we have this, it's not a URL search param, it's only the URL. Okay, so let's save it now, and let's go and see if we are able to make this route protected or not. So I'm going to go over here, I'm going to refresh, and now let's go to the home page, let's refresh. I'm going to click on the client side, it is protected. Client side with SOC is protected, server side is protected. I'm going to click on the middleware, it is protected, and you can see that there is not any flicker when I click on the middleware. And let me go to this session.ts, and I'm gonna go over here true. So by making it true, I have authenticated all the routes. So let me refresh the page. So I'm at the home route, click on the client side. So this has been authenticated. Click on this HOC server side. And if I click on the middleware, I'm able to navigate inside that particular route. So everything is working fine, and we are able to protect over all of these 4 routes with the client side, with high order component on the server side, and through the middleware. And in this middleware file, you can add all other routes as well, whichever you want to make protected by adding the values over here, right? So that's pretty much it for this video. I hope that you have got an idea of the different ways of protecting routes. There is a different way that how we can protect our API routes. That is a different topic. The purpose of this video was to make the front end routes, the URLs, the paths of the web app actually protected. All right, do subscribe my channel, like this video, comment below if you have any question. Thank you so much for watching, guys. See you in the next video.